She didn't even wait for the funeral. Didn't wait for the body to be cold. Didn't wait for me to finish crying on the kitchen table where I'd collapsed after getting the call that Robert had died. Instead, Margaret stormed into my room while I was still in shock and started throwing my belongings into garbage bags. My clothes, my personal items, my jewelry, everything. Throwing them around like they were trash. Like I was trash. And she was smiling while she did it. That's when I realized that the worst moment of my life was about to get so much worse. Or maybe, just maybe, a lot better, depending on how I handled what came next. My name is Dorothy Chen, and I'm 62 years old. My husband Robert died on a Tuesday afternoon from a heart attack. We'd been married for 38 years, built a life together, had 2 beautiful children, and suddenly he was just gone. One moment and everything changed forever. Robert's son from his first marriage was James. James was 40 when Robert died. He'd been living with his father for the past 2 years. His marriage to Margaret had been struggling, and Robert had let them stay while they figured things out. James and Margaret had a young daughter, sweet girl named Emma, 8 years old. Margaret had never been kind to me, but I tolerated it because I loved James and I loved Emma. I wanted to be part of their lives. I wanted to be Grandma Dorothy, who was always there and always supportive. But on the day Robert died, Margaret showed her true colors. She was angry, not sad, not grieving. Angry. Like Robert's death was an inconvenience, like his heart attack was something he'd done to personally upset her. She went into our bedroom where I was sitting in a daze, unable to process what had happened, and started throwing my things. "Get your stuff," she said. Her voice was cold. "Cruel. You need to get out of this house." "What?" "Margaret, Robert just died. I just found out my husband is gone. Can we please just take a moment?" "No. I don't care about your moment. This is my house now. James's house. And you're not welcome here." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My husband hadn't even been dead for an hour. The funeral arrangements hadn't even been made. And this woman was throwing me out into the street like I was a burden, like I was nothing. "Margaret, please, I have nowhere to go. My family is all here. My life is here. Give me a few days to arrange something." "You have an hour," she said. "Pack what you can fit in your car and get out." I was devastated, traumatized. I'd just lost my husband of 38 years, and now his son's wife was kicking me out. I didn't know what to do. I started throwing things into bags. My hands were shaking. I was crying. I could barely see what I was putting in the bags. Margaret stood in the doorway watching, making sure I was leaving, not offering any help, not showing any compassion, just waiting for me to be gone. As I was carrying the bags to my car, I realized I'd forgotten something. Something important. Something that Robert had entrusted to me years ago. Something that was going to change everything. Before I'd married Robert, he'd had a previous life. A previous career. One that had made him very wealthy, obscenely wealthy. He'd been involved in some kind of tech startup in the early days of the internet. He'd gotten in on the ground floor, invested his own money, watched it grow exponentially. When he'd finally sold the company, he'd walked away with nearly $20 million. But Robert hadn't wanted to flaunt it. He didn't want the attention. He didn't want people trying to use him or take advantage of him, so he'd kept it quiet, built a modest lifestyle, donated quietly to charities, helped people without fanfare. He'd given money to my family when we needed it, paid for James's education, helped with a down payment on a house years ago. But he never made a big deal out of it. He'd put most of the money into a trust, a specific trust that was set up to go to me if anything happened to him. He'd shown me the documents years ago, made sure I understood what was in place, made sure I'd be taken care of. He'd loved me that much. He'd been that thoughtful. But I'd been so distraught about losing Robert that I'd completely forgotten about the trust. In the immediate aftermath of his death, finding money in an account somewhere wasn't even on my mind. I was grieving. I was trying to process the fact that the man I'd loved for nearly 40 years was gone. Money didn't matter, but it was about to become very important. I drove to a hotel near the airport, paid cash for a room, sat on the bed surrounded by my belongings in garbage bags, and just cried. I had nowhere to go. My family lived across the country. My closest friend was in Florida. I was alone in a city I'd lived in for 38 years, but suddenly had no home. That's when I remembered. The trust, Robert's insurance, the bank accounts. I needed to call the lawyer. I needed to figure out what I had access to. I needed to understand what financial resources were available to me. The lawyer's name was David Morse. He'd handled all of Robert's business affairs for decades. I called him from my hotel room at 10 p.m. that night. "David, it's Dorothy. Robert passed away today." There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear him processing. "Oh, my God. I'm so sorry to hear that. Thank you. The reason I'm calling is, well, I need to understand the trust. The one Robert set up. I need to know what I'm supposed to do. How I access the money. What happens now? The trust? Which trust are you referring to?" "The one with the tech company money. The one Robert said would take care of me if something happened to him." Another pause. "Longer this time. Dorothy, you should be receiving a packet of documents from me by registered mail. It should arrive in the next few days. It contains all the information you need. But I should tell you, the balance in that trust is quite substantial. Are you somewhere safe? Are you okay?" "I'm at a hotel. My husband's son's wife threw me out of the house immediately after his death. So I'm trying to figure out what my options are." I heard David take a breath. A long, careful breath. "Dorothy, I think you should take a seat. I'm going to tell you some things that are going to surprise you." He proceeded to tell me that the trust contained approximately $19 million. $19 million. Not invested in anything particularly risky. Spread across conservative investments, bonds, dividend-paying stocks, real estate investment trusts, things that generated consistent income. Robert had wanted me to be taken care of. He'd wanted me to have security. He'd wanted me to never have to worry about money. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. $19 million. While I was staying in a hotel after being thrown out by my daughter-in-law. While I was grieving the loss of my husband. While I was confused and traumatized and lost. I had $19 million waiting for me. David explained the process. I would receive a complete accounting of the trust. The documents would give me my access information. I could begin withdrawing funds immediately. The money was mine, completely mine. It had been set aside for me specifically. "What about James?" I asked. "Does he know about this?" "Not from me. That's between you and Robert's will. But I should mention, the trust is separate from the will. The will is subject to probate. This trust bypasses all of that. It goes directly to you. There's nothing anyone can do about it." When I hung up the phone, I sat in that hotel room for a long time, just processing, just trying to understand. I'd gone from being homeless and desperate to being financially set for life, all in the span of a few hours. All because my husband had loved me enough to plan for a future where I'd be safe, even if he was gone. The registered packet arrived 3 days later. I was staying in the hotel still. Hadn't told James or Margaret anything. Hadn't confronted them, just let them believe I was struggling, that I was in need. That Margaret had successfully thrown me out and I had nowhere to go. I read through every document carefully. Opened the bank account online, saw the $19 million sitting there, saw the monthly dividend income, saw that I had more than enough money to never worry about anything ever again. I also looked at the will. Robert had left the house to James. That made sense. It was his son's house. Robert had wanted James to have it. But Robert had also left me $50,000 in cash from his regular estate, plus all of his personal items that held sentimental value. plus a note. A letter he'd written to me. I read that letter and cried for the first time since his death. Not tears of grief. Well, not only tears of grief, but also tears of gratitude, tears of love. Because Robert had thought of everything. He'd made sure I would be okay. He'd planned for this moment even though he'd never expected his heart to give out at 68. The letter said, "My dearest Dorothy, if you're reading this, then I've left you far too early. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for leaving you alone. But I want you to know that you've made my life infinitely better. You've made me want to be a better man. You've loved me unconditionally even when I didn't deserve it. And I've made sure that you'll never have to worry about anything again. This trust is my final gift to you. It's my way of saying thank you for being the best thing that ever happened to me. Love, Robert." I had to decide what to do. I could tell James immediately. Let him know that his stepmother was actually very wealthy and had options. I could confront Margaret about throwing me out. I could demand that she apologize. I could show her exactly what she'd just tried to do to someone who had far more resources than she ever would. Or I could wait. Let her think she'd won. Let her think I was struggling. Let her underestimate me. And then, once the dust settled and the funeral was over and things had calmed down, I could let her realize her mistake. I decided on the second option. Let her think she'd successfully evicted me. Let her believe I was desperate. Give myself time to grieve my husband and process his death before I dealt with everything else. I stayed in the hotel for 2 weeks, attended the funeral, watched Margaret sit next to James, looking sad and supportive, playing the role of the devoted daughter-in-law. Listened to people tell me how sorry they were for my loss. Made the funeral arrangements and paid for everything without flinching. Because now, paying for a funeral wasn't a strain. It was nothing. After the funeral, I hired a lawyer. Not David. Someone new. Someone who specialized in family law and estate disputes. I told her everything. About Margaret throwing me out. About the trust. About the $19 million. About my plan to reclaim my life. "What do you want to accomplish?" she asked. "I want to make sure Margaret understands what she did. I want James to know the truth about my financial situation. I want them both to realize that trying to destroy me was the worst mistake they ever made." My lawyer smiled. "I think we can arrange that." 2 weeks after the funeral, my lawyer sent a letter to James. It outlined everything. The trust, the $19 million. The fact that I'd been evicted within an hour of my husband's death. The fact that Margaret had thrown my belongings into garbage bags like I was trash. It asked James to explain his wife's behavior. It asked him to consider what this said about his family. And it informed him that I was consulting with legal counsel about potential claims for elder abuse. The phone call came within an hour. James, his voice panicked, desperate. "Mom, is it true? The trust? The $19 million? "Yes, honey. Your father took care of me. He wanted to make sure I'd be okay." I had no idea. Margaret didn't tell me what she did. Or rather, she told me you decided to leave. That you needed some space. That you were going to stay with friends. That's not what happened. Margaret threw my things into garbage bags and told me to leave. Within an hour of your father's death, there was a long silence. Then I heard him say something to Margaret. Something angry. A response that sounded like denial. A voice raised. A fight starting. When he got back on the phone, he was crying. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I would never have let that happen. Margaret told me you wanted to leave. She made it sound like you needed time alone." I believed her. "I'm so sorry." "I know, honey. It's okay, but we need to talk about what comes next. Your father wanted to make sure you were taken care of too. The house is yours. He made sure of that. And there are other assets that should come to you from the regular estate. But I need to know that you understand what happened. that you understand how deeply Margaret disrespected me and disrespected your father's memory. Over the next few weeks, James came to terms with what Margaret had done. He confronted her. She admitted it. Said she'd been angry about their marital problems. Said she'd wanted to hurt me because I'd been nice to her, and she'd interpreted that as me being condescending. Said she'd acted irrationally. James kicked her out, told her to find somewhere else to live, started the process of divorce immediately. He couldn't stay with someone who was capable of that level of cruelty. Margaret tried to fight the divorce, tried to claim she was owed alimony, tried to get half of the house. But James had documentation. He had evidence of her infidelity. He had testimony from Emma about the way Margaret treated people. He had everything he needed to divorce her cleanly and keep the house. She fought hard, though, tried to make his life difficult, tried to claim abuse, tried to turn Emma against him, but ultimately, she lost. She got minimal support, had to find her own place, had to rebuild her life without James's resources. As for me, I did something I think Robert would have been proud of. I set up a trust for Emma. Her mother may have been awful, but Emma was innocent. She was just a little girl caught in the middle of her parents' problems. So I set aside a fund to help with her education, to help with her future. Emma would have opportunities because of my generosity. Emma would know that her step-grandmother loved her, even if her mother was terrible. I also donated significantly to charities that Robert had cared about: animal shelters, cancer research, youth programs. His values became my guide. I honored his memory by using his wealth to help others. And then I focused on living, really living. For the first time in years, I traveled, went to Europe, visited every place I'd always wanted to see, took my family on trips, bought a beautiful house that I decorated exactly how I wanted it, took art classes, learned Italian, adopted a rescue dog, did all the things I'd put on hold while I was focused on work and family and Robert's career. Margaret tried to reach out once, about a year after the divorce, said she was sorry, said she'd been going through a difficult time, said she wanted to make amends. I listened to her apology politely, told her that I forgave her. And then I told her that I didn't think it was in either of our best interests to maintain a relationship. That chapter of my life was closed. She didn't handle that well. Tried to reach out to James. Tried to use Emma as a way to get back into our lives. But James set firm boundaries. Made it clear that Margaret was not welcome in our family. That she needed to move on with her life. 2 years after Robert's death, I ran into Margaret at a grocery store. She looked different. Older. Tired. Like life had been hard on her. She saw me and her face went pale. I was tan from traveling. I was wearing an expensive designer outfit. I was carrying multiple shopping bags from high-end stores. I looked nothing like the desperate woman she'd thrown out of her house 2 years earlier. She tried to approach me, to say something, but I just smiled politely and walked past her. I had nothing to say to her. She was irrelevant to my life now. I'd moved on. I'd built a new life, a better life, a life that didn't include her. Looking back, the worst day of my life turned into the best outcome I could have hoped for. Yes, I lost my husband. That pain never goes away completely, but I learned who I could trust. I learned who was willing to hurt me for petty reasons. I learned the value of genuine people, and I learned that sometimes, when you're knocked down, at your lowest point, you have resources you didn't even know about to help you back up. Robert's death was tragic, but his love for me transformed that tragedy into something different. Into security, into freedom, into a second chance to live my life on my own terms. Margaret had tried to destroy me and instead had inadvertently freed me. She threw my bags into the garage, thinking she was throwing me out. Not knowing that in those bags were the keys to my freedom. Not knowing that within days I'd access a trust fund that would change my life. not knowing that her cruelty would end up being the catalyst for my best years. That's the irony of the story. The very day she thought she'd won. The day she thought she'd successfully evicted me from my husband's house. The day she believed she'd destroyed my life. That was the day everything actually started getting better. Robert had taken care of me. One final act of love from beyond the grave. And no amount of cruelty from Margaret could change that. But the story doesn't end there. Because 10 years after Robert's death, Emma turned 18. And that's when everything came full circle in a way I never expected. Emma had been living primarily with James since the divorce. Margaret had visitation rights, but as Emma got older, she chose to spend less and less time with her mother. The truth about what Margaret had done that day slowly came out over the years. Emma learned bits and pieces, from overheard conversations, from things James let slip, from questions she asked that I answered honestly. By the time Emma was 16, she knew the full story. She knew her mother had thrown me out hours after Robert died. She knew about the trust. She knew about the $19 million. She knew that I'd used my wealth to set up a fund for her education. And she knew that despite everything her mother had done, I'd never stopped loving her. The relationship between Emma and Margaret deteriorated. Emma saw her mother clearly now, saw the bitterness, the entitlement, the way Margaret blamed everyone else for her problems, the way she spoke about me with contempt, even though I'd been nothing but kind to Emma. The way she tried to manipulate Emma into feeling sorry for her. Emma started pulling away. Spent holidays with James and me. Called me Grandma Dorothy without any hesitation. Told her friends about the amazing grandmother who took her traveling and taught her about art and showed her that women can be strong and independent and generous. Margaret was furious. She accused me of turning Emma against her, accused James of poisoning their daughter's mind, refused to take responsibility for the fact that Emma was old enough to make her own decisions. Old enough to see who her mother really was. On Emma's 18th birthday, I threw her a party. Not at my house. Somewhere neutral. Rented a beautiful event space, invited all her friends. Her father, my family, Robert's siblings, everyone, who loved Emma and wanted to celebrate her becoming an adult. Margaret wasn't invited. Emma had specifically asked me not to invite her, said she didn't want her mother there, said it would ruin the day, said she was tired of pretending their relationship was okay when it wasn't. I felt conflicted about that. Part of me thought Emma should give her mother a chance, but another part of me understood. Sometimes people earn their place in your life, and sometimes they don't. Margaret had spent 18 years showing Emma exactly who she was. Emma had the right to decide. She didn't want that person at her birthday party. The party was beautiful. Emma was radiant, happy, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about her. And at the end of the night, I gave her an envelope. Inside was information about her trust fund, the one I'd set up when she was 8, the one that had been growing for 10 years. Emma opened the envelope. Read the documents. Her eyes got wider and wider. Then she looked at me. Grandma Dorothy, is this real? It's real, sweetheart. That money is yours. For college, for starting your life, for whatever you need. Your grandfather wanted you to have opportunities, and I wanted to honor his memory by making sure you did. She started crying, hugged me tight, thanked me over and over. James was crying too. Happy tears. Grateful tears, because his daughter was going to have chances he never had, because Robert's wealth was blessing another generation. The trust fund contained about $500,000, not as much as my $19 million, but substantial, enough to pay for college completely, enough to give Emma a head start on her adult life, enough to show her that family takes care of family, that love means providing for the people you care about. That generosity creates ripples that extend far beyond the initial gift. Emma decided to go to college across the country. She wanted distance from her mother. She wanted to start fresh somewhere new. She Wanted to figure out who she was without Margaret's influence. She wanted to build her own life on her own terms. I helped her move into her dorm, helped her buy everything she needed, spent a week with her getting settled, and on the last day before I flew home, we had lunch together, just the two of us. "Grandma Dorothy, can I ask you something?" Emma said. "Of course, honey. Do you think my mom will ever change? Will she ever understand what she did? Will she ever be the person I need her to be?" I thought about that carefully. Thought about Margaret. About the woman who'd thrown me out hours after my husband died. About the woman who'd tried to destroy me when I was at my lowest. About the woman who'd spent 18 years showing her daughter exactly who she was. "I don't know," I said honestly. "People can change, but they have to want to. They have to recognize their mistakes. They have to do the hard work of becoming better. Your mother, I don't know if she's willing to do that work." That's what I thought. It makes me sad. But I can't keep waiting for her to be someone she's not. No, you can't. You have to live your life. Build your future. Surround yourself with people who lift you up instead of tear you down. Your mother's choices are hers. Your choices are yours. Don't let her past define your future. Emma nodded, wiped away tears. "Thank you. For everything. For not giving up on me, even when my mom was awful. For loving me anyway. For showing me what real family looks like. That's what family does, sweetheart. We show up. We support each other. We love each other through the hard times. That's what your grandfather did for me. And that's what I'm doing for you." 4 years later, Emma graduated college with honors. Top of her class. Full-ride scholarship that she earned on her own merit. She didn't need to use much of the trust fund because she worked hard and earned her own way. The remaining money became the start of her savings, the foundation for her financial future. She got a job at a prestigious company, started building her career, met a wonderful man named Daniel who treated her with respect and kindness. They got engaged. Started planning a wedding. Margaret tried to insert herself into the wedding planning, called Emma constantly, demanded to be involved, said she had a right to be part of her daughter's big day. Emma held firm, set boundaries, told her mother she could attend the wedding as a guest, but she wouldn't be walking Emma down the aisle, wouldn't be giving a speech, wouldn't be in the family photos, would simply be there to witness Emma marry the man she loved. Margaret was outraged, threatened to boycott the wedding. Emma's response was simple. "That's your choice, Mom. I hope you'll be there. But if you're not, the wedding will still happen. My life will still move forward. I'm not going to let your feelings control my decisions anymore." Margaret came to the wedding, sat in the back, watched her daughter get married, saw James walk Emma down the aisle with tears in his eyes, saw me sitting in the front row as mother of the groom's family, saw how happy Emma was, saw what she'd missed out on by being the person she'd chosen to be. At the reception, Emma asked me to dance. A special dance for grandmothers and granddaughters. The DJ announced it. Emma took my hand, led me to the dance floor, and as we swayed to the music, she whispered in my ear, "Thank you for being my real family. Thank you for showing me what love looks like. Thank you for being there when my own mother wasn't. You're the woman I want to be when I grow up. Strong and kind and generous. That's your legacy, Grandma Dorothy. Not the money, not the trust fund, but the example you set, the way you loved me no matter what. That's what I'll remember. That's what I'll pass on to my own children someday." I cried. Couldn't help it, because Emma understood. She understood what really mattered. Not the $19 million. Not the material wealth, but the love, the support, the choice to show up for each other, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Now, 15 years after Robert's death, I'm 77 years old. Emma is 33. She has 2 children of her own. beautiful babies who call me Great-Grandma Dorothy. She's successful in her career, happy in her marriage, living a life she's proud of. James is thriving. He remarried 5 years ago to a wonderful woman named Linda who actually appreciates family, who treats me with respect, who understands that I'm not trying to replace anyone, just trying to love the people in my life. And Margaret? 3 years ago, something unexpected happened. She reached out to me, not through James, not through Emma, directly. She sent me a handwritten letter, the first real communication we'd had in over a decade. The letter was different from her previous apology. This one felt genuine, raw. She wrote about hitting rock bottom, about losing everything that mattered, about spending years blaming everyone else for her problems before finally looking in the mirror and accepting responsibility. She'd been in therapy for 5 years, working through her anger, her bitterness, her tendency to lash out when she felt threatened or insecure. She wrote about that terrible day, the day Robert died. She explained what had been going through her mind, how she'd felt invisible in the marriage, how James had been pulling away, how she'd resented me for being kind when she felt so miserable, how Robert's sudden death had triggered something in her, a panic, a fear that she and James would be homeless, that they'd have nowhere to go. So she'd lashed out at the easiest target, me, the woman who'd never done anything but try to be supportive. "I know there's no excuse for what I did," she wrote. "I know saying I'm sorry doesn't change the past, but I need you to know that I think about that day constantly. I live with the shame of it. I lost my daughter because of the person I was. I lost my marriage. I lost everything, and I deserved to lose it all. Because I was cruel. I was vindictive. I was everything wrong with a person in crisis." She went on to write that she wasn't asking for forgiveness, wasn't asking to be welcomed back into the family. She just wanted me to know that she understood what she'd done, that she'd spent years becoming a different person, that she'd learned what really mattered, and that if she could go back to that day, she would have held me instead of hurting me, would have grieved with me instead of attacking me, would have been the person Emma needed her mother to be. I read that letter 3 times, sat with it for days, thought about what Robert would have wanted, what kind of person I wanted to be, what message I wanted to send to Emma and her children about grace and second chances. I wrote back. Not a long letter, just a short note. I told Margaret that I appreciated her honesty, that I could see she'd done the work to change, that I forgave her for what happened that day. But I also told her that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, that I wasn't interested in rebuilding a relationship, that some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt. But I wished her well, hoped she'd continue her healing journey, hoped she'd find peace. Margaret wrote back one more time, thanked me for the grace I'd shown, said she understood my boundaries, said she respected them, and then she asked me for one thing. Would I be willing to tell Emma that she'd reached out, that she'd done the work, that she wasn't the same person anymore? I thought about that request carefully, talked to James about it, talked to Linda, and ultimately, I decided to let Emma know, not to push for a reconciliation, not to suggest Emma should give her mother another chance, but simply to share the information and let Emma decide what, if anything, she wanted to do with it. Emma read Margaret's letter. Read, my response. Sat with it for weeks. And then, on her own terms, she reached out to her mother. They met for coffee, just the 2 of them. No pressure, no expectations. Just 2 adults trying to navigate a complicated history. That first meeting led to others. Slowly, carefully. Emma set firm boundaries, said she was willing to explore a relationship, but it would take time. That Margaret would have to prove through her actions, not just her words, that she'd changed, that Emma's children came first. That if Margaret ever showed signs of the old behaviors, Emma would walk away without hesitation. Margaret accepted those terms, showed up for the coffee dates, listened more than she talked. Asked about Emma's life without demanding to be part of it. Sent birthday cards to the great-grandchildren without expecting visits in return. Respected Emma's boundaries without complaint. It's been 2 years since that first coffee meeting. Margaret has met Emma's children 3 times, always in public places. Always with Daniel present. The children don't call her grandma. They call her Margaret. And that's okay. She's earning their trust slowly, proving she can be safe. Proving she can be consistent. Emma told me recently that she doesn't know if she'll ever have the relationship with her mother that she wishes she could have had. But she's grateful for the relationship they're building now. It's honest. It's real. It's based on who they both are today, not who they were 15 years ago. And me? I'm proud of Emma. Proud that she had the courage to set boundaries. Proud that she's willing to explore reconciliation on her own terms. Proud that she's teaching her children about grace and accountability in equal measure. I still don't have a relationship with Margaret. I don't need one. I don't want one. That door is closed for me. But I'm glad she's doing the work. I'm glad Emma has the option to decide for herself. I'm glad the next generation won't carry the full weight of our complicated history. I think about Robert often. Wonder what he'd make of all this. The trust fund that changed my life. The way I used his gift to create opportunities for Emma. The family that emerged from the ashes of that terrible day. The healing that's happening, slowly, in unexpected ways. I think he'd be proud. Not of the money, not of the revenge I could have taken but didn't, but of the grace, the boundaries. The way I chose to honor his memory by living fully and loving generously. The way I protected myself without becoming bitter. The way I supported Emma without controlling her choices. Robert's legacy isn't the $19 million. It's the life I built with that money. The education Emma received. The great-grandchildren who have opportunities because their great-grandfather planned ahead. The charities that continue to benefit from his wealth. The example of what love looks like when it's given freely, without strings, without conditions. Sometimes I drive past the old house, the one where Robert died, the one where Margaret threw me out. James still lives there with Linda. They've renovated it, changed it, made it their own. It doesn't look like the place where my life fell apart 15 years ago. It looks like a home where a family is thriving. James invited me over for dinner last month. The first time I'd been inside since that terrible day. I was nervous. Didn't know if I could handle being in those rooms again. Didn't know if the memories would overwhelm me. But when I walked through the door, it wasn't the same place. Linda had repainted, changed the furniture, added her own touches. The bedroom where Margaret had thrown my things into garbage bags was now a home office. Bright, cheerful, full of Linda's pottery and James's books. No trace of that dark day remained. We had dinner in the kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd collapsed after getting the call about Robert's death. But now it was filled with laughter, with Emma's children running around, with Linda's homemade bread, with James telling stories about his father, with life continuing in the place where death had once dominated. After dinner, James pulled me aside, showed me something he'd found while cleaning out the attic. A box of Robert's things, old photographs, letters he'd written to his first wife, mementos from his time in the tech industry. Things James had never seen before. I didn't know Dad kept all this, James said. I didn't know how much of his life I'd missed. We went through the box together. Found a photograph of Robert at 25, standing in front of the computer company that would make him wealthy. He looked so young, so hopeful, so full of dreams. I'd never seen that version of him. Had only known the man he'd become after building his fortune. After learning to be quiet about his wealth, after deciding what really mattered. At the bottom of the box was another letter, addressed to James, sealed, never opened. Should I read it? James asked. Your father left it for you. Of course you should read it. James opened the envelope carefully. Read the letter silently. Tears started streaming down his face. He handed it to me without a word. The letter was Robert's explanation. His apology for not being the father James needed when he was young. For being too focused on work. For letting James's mother raise him mostly alone after the divorce. For not being present in the way that mattered. Dear James, it read. If you're reading this, then I'm gone. And there are things I need you to know. Things I should have said while I was alive but didn't have the courage to say. I wasn't a good father to you when you were young. I was building a company, chasing success, trying to prove something to myself and to the world. And in the process, I missed your childhood. I missed the baseball games, the school plays, the moments that mattered. Your mother tried to tell me, tried to make me understand what I was losing, but I didn't listen. And by the time I realized what I'd given up, it was too late. You were grown, you had your own life. And the distance between us felt impossible to bridge. When I met Dorothy, something changed in me. She showed me what it meant to be present, to show up, to put the people you love first. She made me want to be better, and I tried. I hope you saw that. I hope you felt it. But I know it wasn't enough. I know I can never get back the years I lost with you. I'm leaving you the house because I want you to have stability, security, a place to build your own family, a place where you can be the father I should have been. Learn from my mistakes, James. Don't wait until it's too late to show up for the people you love. Don't let work or pride or fear keep you from being present. Be there for Emma. Be there for Margaret. Be there in the ways I wasn't there for you. And take care of Dorothy. She's been the best thing in my life. She deserves to be protected and loved and supported. I've made financial arrangements for her. She'll be taken care of. But she'll need more than money. She'll need family. She'll need you. Please don't let her be alone. Please let her be part of Emma's life. Please show her the kindness I should have shown your mother all those years ago. I love you, son. I'm proud of the man you've become. And I'm sorry I wasn't the father you deserved. But I hope, in some small way, I can still help you build the life you want. The life I should have helped you build all along. Dad. James was sobbing now. Hard, deep sobs that shook his whole body. I put my arm around him. Let him cry. Let him process everything he'd just learned. All the complicated feelings about a father who'd been absent and then present, who'd made mistakes and then tried to fix them, who'd loved imperfectly but loved nonetheless. I didn't know he felt this way, James said when he could finally speak. I thought he didn't care. I thought the company mattered more than I did. He cared, I said. He just didn't know how to show it. Not at first. But he learned. He changed. And that letter proves it. He thought about you. He worried about you. He wanted you to have everything he'd missed out on. And I failed him, James said. I let Margaret treat you the way she did. I didn't protect you the way he asked me to. I didn't show up for you. You didn't know what Margaret had done. She lied to you. And when you found out the truth, you made it right. You did exactly what your father would have wanted. You chose family. You chose kindness. You chose to be the man he hoped you'd be. James looked at me with red, swollen eyes. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for setting up the trust for Emma. Thank you for being the family Dad asked you to be. I don't deserve your generosity after what happened. We all deserve grace, honey. We all deserve second chances. Your father gave me that gift through the trust. I'm just passing it along. That's what love does. It multiplies. It extends. It reaches into the future and changes things. We sat there in that house for a long time, going through Robert's old things, sharing memories, talking about who he'd been and who we'd all become since his death. It felt healing. Like we were finally closing a chapter that had been left open for too long. Linda called us back to the kitchen eventually. The children needed to be put to bed. Real life needed to resume. But something had shifted. Something important had been said. Something had been healed between James and me that neither of us had realized needed healing. As I drove home that night, I thought about Robert's letter, about his regrets, about the way he'd tried to make things right even after death, about the trust fund that had saved me, about the house he'd left to James, about the way his love continued to shape our family 15 years after his heart had stopped beating. That's when I realized something profound. The $19 million wasn't Robert's most valuable gift to me. It was the example he set, the willingness to acknowledge mistakes, the courage to change, the commitment to make things right even when it's hard, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it requires vulnerability. I'd spent 15 years thinking that money had saved me, that the trust fund had been my salvation. But it wasn't the money, it was what the money represented. Robert's love, his thoughtfulness, his commitment to my well-being even in death. That was the real gift. The money was just the vehicle. And I'd passed that gift along, to Emma through her education fund, to the charities Robert had cared about, to the family we'd built through intentional generosity and grace. The money had been a tool, but love was the real currency. Love was what changed everything. 6 months after that dinner at James's house, I received another letter. This time from Margaret. Not asking for anything. Not apologizing again. Just sharing. She'd gotten a job working at a nonprofit that helped women in crisis. Women who'd lost everything. Women who were starting over. Women who needed a second chance. I work with women every day who remind me of who I was, she wrote. Angry, desperate, lashing out at people who don't deserve it. And I try to help them see what I couldn't see back then. That hurting others doesn't heal your own pain. That cruelty doesn't solve your problems. That the only way forward is through honesty, accountability, and change. I tell them about you sometimes. About the woman I hurt on the worst day of her life. About how you could have destroyed me but chose grace instead. About how you set boundaries without being cruel. About how you forgave without forgetting. They need to hear that. They need to know that there's a way to be strong and kind at the same time, that you can protect yourself without becoming bitter. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that your example is rippling out into the world. That the way you handled that terrible situation is helping other women learn to handle their own situations better. That Robert's love for you is still changing lives. Even now, even after all this time. I cried when I read that letter. Not sad tears. Grateful tears. Because I realized that everything I'd been through, the loss, the cruelty, the money, the choices I'd made about how to use Robert's gift, all of it had meant something. All of it had mattered. All of it had created ripples that extended far beyond my own life. I wrote back to Margaret. Told her I was proud of the work she was doing. Told her that helping other women was the best way to honor the lessons she'd learned. Told her that I'd be making a donation to her nonprofit in Robert's name, because that's what he would have wanted. To help people. To create opportunities. To make the world a little better. The donation was substantial, $50,000. Enough to fund the nonprofit's operations for a year. Enough to help hundreds of women get back on their feet. Enough to turn Margaret's personal redemption into something that could benefit others. When Margaret received the donation, she called me. The first time we'd spoken on the phone in over 15 years. Dorothy, I don't know what to say. It's too much. It's not too much. It's exactly right. Robert would want his money to help people. And you're helping people. So this is where it should go. But after everything I did, Margaret, we've been through this. You did a terrible thing. You've taken responsibility. You've changed. Now you're using your experience to help others. That's redemption. That's growth. That's exactly what Robert would have wanted to see. There was a long pause. Then Margaret said something that surprised me. You know what Robert told me once? Years before he died. He said that the true measure of wealth isn't what you accumulate, it's what you give away. I didn't understand it then. I thought he was just being pretentious. But now I get it. You've been giving away his wealth for 15 years. And every time you do, you multiply its value. You turn money into opportunities, into hope, into change. That's real wealth. That's real power. Robert was a wise man, I said. I'm just trying to honor his wisdom. You're doing more than that. You're living it. And you're teaching the rest of us how to live it too. When I hung up the phone, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Closure. Not just about that terrible day 15 years ago, but about everything that had happened since, all the choices I'd made, all the ways I'd used Robert's gift, all the relationships I'd navigated. It all suddenly made sense. It all fit together into a story that had meaning, purpose, impact. Emma's oldest child, my great-grandson Michael, turned 7 last month. He's fascinated by his great-grandfather, asks questions constantly about the man he never met. What was he like? What did he do? Why did he save so much money? How did he know how to help Grandma Dorothy? I tell Michael stories about Robert, about his kindness, his quiet generosity, his belief that wealth should serve people, not the other way around. Michael listens intently, takes it all in, and then he asks the question that matters most. Great-Grandma Dorothy, when I grow up, will I have money to help people too? Maybe, I say. But you don't need money to help people, Michael. You need kindness. You need compassion. You need the willingness to show up for others when they need you. Your great-grandfather had money, yes, but what made him special was his heart, his character, his values. That's what I want you to inherit. Not the money. The values. But the money helps, right? Yes, honey, the money helps. And when you're older, if you need help getting started in life, there will be resources available to you. Because your great-grandfather wanted every generation to have opportunities. But the real gift isn't the money. It's knowing that you come from a family that believes in helping others. That's the legacy that matters. Michael thinks about this. Then he says, I want to be like great-grandpa Robert. I want to help people. Then you will be, I tell him, because you already have the most important thing. You have the desire. The rest will follow. Last week, I turned 77. Emma threw me a birthday party. The whole family came, James and Linda, Emma and Daniel, the great-grandchildren. Even some of Robert's siblings who are still alive. It was loud and chaotic and perfect. At the end of the night, after everyone had gone home, I sat in my beautiful house, the one I'd bought with Robert's money 15 years ago, and thought about everything that had happened since that terrible day. The day Margaret threw me out, the day I thought my life was over, the day that turned out to be the beginning of something new. I thought about the $19 million, about what it had bought me. Not just houses and travel and material comfort, but freedom, security, the ability to be generous without fear, the power to create opportunities for the people I loved, the chance to honor Robert's memory in meaningful ways. I thought about Margaret, about her journey from cruel to contrite to committed to helping others, about the unexpected ways redemption shows up, about how people can change if they're willing to do the work, about grace and boundaries and the complex dance between them. I thought about Emma, about watching her grow from an 8-year-old caught in the middle of her parents' dysfunction to a confident, successful, happy adult with her own family, about the trust fund that had helped her but hadn't defined her, about the values she'd absorbed and was now passing on to her own children. I thought about James, about the father he'd become despite having an absent father for much of his childhood, about the husband he'd become after learning what not to do from his first marriage, about the son he'd been to me even though I was his stepmother, about the bridges we'd built and maintained over 15 years. And I thought about Robert, about his love that had transcended death. about his planning that had protected me, about his values that had shaped a family, about his legacy that continued to ripple out into the world through donations and opportunities and examples of how to live well. The $19 million had been Robert's final gift to me, but the real gift was the life I'd built with it, the choices I'd made, the people I'd helped, the family I'd nurtured, the grace I'd extended, the boundaries I'd maintained, the values I'd embodied. That was the true wealth. That was the real inheritance. That was what would last long after the money was gone. Margaret had thrown my bags into the garage 15 years ago, thinking she was throwing me out, thinking she was winning, thinking she was solving her problems by hurting me. She didn't know about the trust fund, didn't know about the $19 million, didn't know that her cruelty would backfire so spectacularly. But more importantly, she didn't know that her cruelty would become the catalyst for something beautiful. For a family that learned to value kindness over convenience. For a woman who learned to use wealth as a tool for good. For a granddaughter who learned that grace and boundaries can coexist. For a great-grandson who learned that helping others is the highest calling. That's the real story. Not the money. Not the revenge that I could have taken but didn't. Not even the reconciliation that happened years later. The real story is about transformation. About how the worst day of your life can become the foundation for the best years of your life. About how cruelty can be transmuted into grace. About how loss can become gain. About how death can lead to new life. Robert died 15 years ago, but his love lives on. In the trust fund that protected me. In the education fund that empowered Emma. In the donations that help others. In the values that shape our family. In the example that continues to ripple out into the world. That's immortality. Not living forever, but creating love that outlasts you. Creating impact that extends beyond your lifetime. Creating change that benefits people you'll never meet. And that's what Margaret's cruelty gave me, paradoxically. The opportunity to discover and embody that truth. The chance to take Robert's gift and multiply it. The freedom to live intentionally and generously and fully. The ability to show Emma and her children what real strength looks like. What real wealth means. What real love does. So yes, my daughter-in-law threw my bags into the garage on the day my husband died, unaware of the $19 million. Unaware that she was setting me free. Unaware that her worst moment would become the beginning of my best years. Unaware that cruelty would be transformed into grace. Unaware that loss would become gain. Unaware that death would lead to life. And I'm grateful. Not for the cruelty itself. That was wrong. It was unjustifiable. It was painful. But I'm grateful for what came after. For who I became. For what I built. For the family we created from the ashes of that terrible day. For the love that survived and thrived and multiplied. For the legacy that will outlast us all. That's my story. That's my truth. That's my legacy. And I'm sharing it so that anyone who's ever been knocked down knows this. You're stronger than you think. You have more resources than you realize. And sometimes the people who try to destroy you are actually setting you free. Not because their cruelty is good, but because your response to it can be. Your choice to rise. Your decision to be gracious. Your commitment to turn pain into purpose. That's where real power lives. That's where real wealth is found. That's where real victory emerges. Margaret thought she won that day, but I'm the one who won. Because I chose love. I chose generosity. I chose to honor Robert. I chose to be there for Emma. I chose to build something beautiful from something terrible. And that choice made all the difference. Not the money, the choice. That's what saved me. That's what transformed everything. That's what matters most. Subscribe for more stories like this.